Hi everyone, Omi from CodeLab here, and welcome back to the fourth video in our series on the basics of HTML and CSS. Now this one will mainly be covering a little bit more advanced topics within CSS, as well as something called media queries. Now, first thing that I want to mention is that while we are going to delve into some more of those key value attribute mappings that CSS offers, like other features besides color that we can change to make our web page look much prettier, we're obviously not going to be able to show you guys all of them, nor are we going to show you guys the perfect use cases. And same goes for HTML. There's a ton of tags and general use cases that we couldn't show you guys. And that's just because of the basic constraints of time and because there's a lot of other stuff to cover in these boot camps. That doesn't mean that this is all of the knowledge that you need to know. We're just trying to teach you guys the basic syntax so that when the time comes and you have to work on a specific HTML or CSS related task, you guys have enough syntactical knowledge of how the languages work at a very basic level that you can actually go and read other documentation or just kind of look up the specific stuff of what you will need to figure out your specific problem. So let's say that your PM gives you a specific HTML or CSS task, you'll know enough that you can look it up and understand what it's saying and apply what they're doing and at least get some basic knowledge of what they're trying to say and actually get your task done and completed. So just a quick little note there. But of those very common CSS attributes, there are a few that we would like to show you guys, and we'd actually like to demo really quickly why divs are so important. So I mentioned before that divs make your code look a little bit cleaner. They can kind of bundle things together, but they're also great for applying CSS rules, because if you apply a CSS rule to a div, it will actually go down and apply itself to all of the tags inside of it. So sort of like a waterfall, it will cascade down, hence the cascading name part of the entire name, cascading style sheets, short for CSS, long for CSS. So if I actually add a class to this div and I call it div class, say for example, any rules that this div class selector might have will automatically be applied to this h2, to this p, and to this image tag all at once for you. So you do not have to write this out 3 times, and it makes your code look a bit neater and cleaner. And from a logical standpoint, it makes more sense because they're all grouped together by this one specific class. So now let's actually go and define this class right here, and we will show you guys some of the more useful rules perhaps that CSS offers. So one that's very, very useful I would like to think is background color. Obviously, same with color affecting text font. I also want to change background color. So let's make our background color red right here. And if I actually refresh right here, you'll see exactly what I mean. The background color is now red for all 3 elements. It looks like one big block that the div is now representing and holding. We can also do some other stuff. So you can actually align both text and images using the text align center command. So now just like that, if I refresh again, everything has been centered. Another thing that is very useful is font changing. So I can use the font family keyword, and then I can just list out the font name Arial. And now just like that, I have the Arial font. Note you only have a few dozen different pre-installed fonts with your computer and your OS. You can actually download external fonts and import them, but that's a whole nother subject. But you are limited to a few there. Font weight, I'm going to say 900. So this is actually how bold something looks. So there's actually a different way to make text just look bold, pretty simple. You can actually just do it using regular HTML, but actually every font has a weighting system. So every font is weighted from 100 to 900 on increments of 100. So 1, 2, 3, all the way up to 900. And starting at 100, the font is very light. It's very thin, like you can barely see it. But if we go up to font weight 900 and I refresh my page here, you'll see that this text just became very bold and very thick. And that is what the font weight numbers represent. So that's actually very helpful and very important. Another thing is border. So if I want to make a border, there's actually 3 arguments here. So it's no longer just a 1 argument CSS thing. There's actually multiple things. This is actually a little bit harder of a color to see, so I'll change this to blue. Sorry about that. I'll make this 10. But basically, if you want a border to be around something like my div container, the first thing that you can do is say how big you think it should be. More on the syntax in a second. You can say if you think the line should be solid, dashed, stuff like that, and then the line's actual color. Now this 10px right here is actually a sizing argument, so that's me saying that I think my border should be 10 pixels big. There's a few other ways to size things, more on those in a future write-up for you guys. There's also 2 other arguments. The first one right here is padding. So if I say 64 pixels, that now means that I have 64 pixels worth of padding around all 4 sides of my div. And that padding actually takes in the red background color. If I say margin, I'll now have 64 pixels of spacing as well around my div, in addition to these previous 64, but that spacing will now be white because margin does not inherit background color like padding does. More on this in a future write-up as well if margin and padding seem kind of weird or confusing to you. But those are some of the basic CSS rules that we wanted to go over. One more thing is the concept of media queries. So you might have noticed that if you go to a really popular website like apple.com, things actually look pretty different depending on your screen size. Like right here, this is what my screen looks like. But if I make it bigger, things kind of stretch out. But if I make it smaller, suddenly things like the images collapse, they become smaller. All of these words at the very top of my nav bar, for example, they actually all kind of disappear into this like hamburger menu thing right here, this little drop down that's not here whenever my page gets bigger. And that's actually all because of something called media queries. So that basically means that when your page gets like, a media query is essentially a way of detecting when your page gets larger or smaller than a certain size. And when that happens, certain other actions you can tell to occur. So I think it's best if I actually just show this using code, and we'll kind of explain as we go here. So the syntax to trigger a media query is the @media selector. Again, that looks like weird syntax. Don't worry about it. Just know we say @media to trigger a media query. Then I say the minimum width that I want this to occur for. So for me, I want my media query to occur whenever my page itself has a minimum width of 600 pixels. So right now I'm viewing this on like a 1440p monitor, so my monitor is like very, very big. But when the width of my browser itself gets above 600 pixels, then this extra media query effect rule should take place. Okay, and then now my brackets here to actually define my rule inside of. Note you could also do max width. So if this was max width, then it would say that so long as my page is under 600 pixels, okay? So that's that. Now, essentially what we do inside of here is we say, like whenever my media query detects that my page is above 600 pixels wide, then certain CSS rules should be applied. So what you have to do is you have to actually take a pre-existing class. So you can't make a new class inside of this. I have to take this pre-existing div class. And what I can say inside of here is that my background color should actually be green. Okay, so if I refresh my page, now my background color is green because the width of my browser is greater than 600 pixels. And notice here that all of the other rules, they actually apply as well still. So everything from this div class still applies, but this rule is redefined with an extra rule in addition to all of that original stuff whenever my page has a minimum width of 600 pixels. Now, when it has a width less than that, this rule will no longer apply. And you'll actually see if we get way, way smaller here, that now it's become red. Now my image got messed up, other stuff happened, but that rule no longer applies. Now it has became red. Now it's back to green. So that is the general idea of a media query. Hopefully you all found this video pretty useful, and I will catch you all in the next one. Thank you.